I recruited an unwitting army to annoy an asshole.
Back in the early 90s, my friend, I'll call him Lou because that's his name, was selling his RX-7 via an ad in the old print auto trader. It came out every Thursday, so that first weekend was critical for sales. The very first guy that came to see it on Saturday said he wanted to buy after driving it. Of course he had to finance, so they couldn't finish the sale during the weekend. Lou was worried about losing all the bites from the new ad, so he asked for a deposit of $500. The guy wrote a check. Lou told the rest of the callers that weekend that it was sold in, unfortunately didn't ask for their numbers in case it fell through. This story predates caller ID availability in my area by a couple years, so those leads were gone. As you surely expect by now, the guy flakes on Monday and Lou deposits the check. Payment stopped. Big surprise. Sitting around my apartment, we schemed revenge, but all we had to go on was the check. Lucky for karma, there was a phone number printed on it. Our first idea was to write a little program to dial his number repeatedly from my modem, but that would be easily stopped and probably get us in direct trouble. Then Lou got a page from his work. This was back in the one-way pager days. You call the pager's dedicated phone number, it sounds a tone, then you punch digits for the number you want to be sent to the pager. The person with pager receives the number you entered and, presumably, calls it. Everyone with a pager made sure that people who needed to get a hold of them had the number for their pager. You'd see pager numbers in print and TV ads all the time for various services. Boom, angelic choir sings, heavenly light goes off. Lou's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix, middle 3 digits. What if we randomly dial numbers with that prefix and page them all to this guy's number? So we order a pizza, open some beers, and start looking through the yellow pages at locksmiths and tow truck services to find more pager prefixes. We wind up with a dozen or so. After that, it's half an hour of coding in ye olde Borland C++. I put together a program that would cycle through our list of known prefixes and add a random final 4 digits to get a random pager. It calls the pager's number, pauses, then dials this asshole's number and throws a 911 suffix on there for good measure, which is something people with pagers understood to indicate an emergency of some kind. The whole thing was just generating a string like 88602xci, asshole number \911 hash, where 30 is the pager prefix and yai is random. Commas make pauses, since you need to connect to the paging service before you can enter the message. Make string, send to modem, wait for no carrier, hang up, repeat. We start eating the pizza and let it fly. I was very picky about my devices, so my modem was a US robotics courier. You could set an S register to control how long it would sound each tone when dialing. Uber nerds like myself would keep tinkering with that to get it as fast as possible while still being recognized by the phone service. It was very fast. I swag it could run through 4 pages per minute, so this guy would get 240 calls/hour. We just watched it run and laughed our asses off. We realized pretty early on that we didn't really know if it was working, so we wandered down to the 7-Eleven and called him from a payphone, just in case he could somehow trace it or the popo were on the case and watching. A man answered and I said, "Hello, I got a page at this number." I heard an audible sigh and then he just hung up. Gold. We ended up running it for a few hours, then let it go quiet for a few days. Then we scheduled it to start dialing in the middle of the night every few days, plus we'd fire it up by hand randomly whenever we had a party. We checked again from the 7-Eleven after a week and it went to an answering machine, which did the rapid tone at the end of the greeting to indicate the tape was full. We reasoned that the line was still ringing, anyway, so we kept it at for another month or so. Eventually, we got the disconnected warning when we made one of our regular checkups. I'm sure he just changed the number. I like to think about that guy answering the phone after a few days of silence when we started it up. I can vividly imagine his response at the "Did someone page me to this number?" as he slams the phone down and then it rings again a few seconds later. Or, of course, coming home from work and having an answering machine full of random people asking about being paged. And, yeah, we annoyed several thousand people into calling this guy by the end. But each of those people was only put out for a single call. A cost, yes, but a necessary one for justice.
Neighbors steal our dog, we take their kids.
This happened when I was around 12-13, so the details might be a little skewed. Most of my childhood, the house right next to ours has been condemned and abandoned. The property owners were willing to sell the land for $200. That's how bad it was. My family didn't buy it because the land tax in our area is high because we are a school of choice. Eventually someone bought it and threw a manufactured home on it to replace the condemned home. Soon a nice old man moved in next door, and we didn't pay too close attention because he kept to himself. That was until his daughter moved in with him. Soon our quiet little neighborhood turned into an episode of white trash in trouble. The daughter would fight with her spouse about every little thing and keep my family along with our neighbors up half the night. Their kids were the worst part of all. We never knew how many kids lived in that house because so many different children and adults were in and out of there all the time. Me and my siblings tried to become friends with them because there are not too many kids our age in the town. We ended up being more of their babysitters than just a friendly neighbor kid. They would come over to our house and each of my siblings had a group of kids 3 to 4 each to watch over. These kids would walk in uninvited into our house, while we would play with their sibling in the yard. Then steal toys and games from our rooms. Honestly, they stole stuff from all over our house, but this was the main areas. They would either take it for themselves or throw it in our backyard river. They did that a lot if we made them mad for taking back our stuff. They would constantly run in and out of our house, even if no one was with them. They would steal all of the fruit in the basket my mom left out for us. My mom didn't kick them out immediately, because she never wanted to deny a kid food if they need it. My mom confronted the parents about their behavior, and their 3-year-old son called her **tch. The parents refused to apologize for their behavior, saying stuff like, "If you loved it so much you wouldn't have let them take it," or "Don't parent my kid." One thing they would specifically do with me is they pulled on my hair all the time. I'm a tomboy, and they would just call me a boy in a wig because girls can't play with skateboards, girls can't play with ninja action figures, or any other gender stereotype. They would constantly bombard me because they truly didn't know girls were allowed to play with anything they wanted. One of their heavier children stole my skateboard and jumped on it, breaking it in half. Similar to that, "Sir No Head, Vine." Then they said I shouldn't have been playing with one anyway. There are plenty more examples, but I think you get the point. The neighbors decided that because our house was nicer, that they had permission to run an electrical line from our backyard plugs to their house. Which in itself is a bad thing, but they decided to run off our electric bill to triple the cost of our original. We were lower middle class, below poverty level, so we couldn't afford that kind of bill. The rule in our house is if you're not using it is turned off. That's why my parents were awfully surprised to see an $800 electric bill. Eventually a person from our electric company came out to our house to see what was happening. They found an extension cord running to their house. The electrician simply unplugged it, then warned the neighbors of the legal reasons why they can't do that. Then said that should be then end of that problem. My mom politely but sternly went to the neighbors that this was not okay. The neighbor had a small adult tantrum about it and cussed my mom out, but eventually come back into her home. My mom was obviously not pleased with their behavior, but tried not to escalate the situation any further. Our neighbors tried 1 or 2 more times to run the line from our house to theirs. They would move it at night so we wouldn't see them move it. Each time when we unplugged it, they would cuss us out and send their kids over to destroy something else in our home. Eventually mom straight up told them if they or their come on our property again, she would call the police and press charges. We could still be friends with their kids, but they weren't allowed on our land. They decided that because we won't let them use our electricity, that the next best option was to steal our dog from the backyard, and claim our dog attacked her kids. Even though our dog was harmless and cowers at everything due to bad owners before us, I'm guessing because our dog liked to rip her tags off a lot that the neighbors said she was a stray. That attacked them. The pound came and took our puppo away. By the time my brothers and I got home, she was already gone. We just assumed she ran off to our grandmother's who lived down the street. She would do this often because my grandma spoils her. When my parents came home, they about lost it, learning our dog was missing. We obviously looked for her but couldn't find her. After 2 days, we found her at the dog pound. The officer said it was obvious that our dog didn't hurt their kids, but they still had to take her in for an evaluation. My parents had to spend $200 to get her out. The pound told us why the dog was taken, and my mom enough was enough. Now the revenge. When my mom got home, she sent my little brother over to their house to play with their kids. He was still friends with some of them at the time. My brother became a little spy that day. His job was to look around their house and report anything that could be suspicious. We learned from him that they were sitting 3 kids to a twin bed. The entire house was cramped and dirty. The old man that lived there was hardly home because he couldn't stand his adult daughter that lived there, but he didn't want to evict her from the home and leave his grandkids homeless. All around the kids were being neglected. With the information my brother gathered, my mom called CPS, Child Protective Services, on the home. Within the month all of the children minus one, who the old man cared for, were removed from the home. While I agree the foster system is bad, it was definitely better than what they were going through in that house. The mother of the children started to fight with the old man, her father, on everything. Because her kids were no longer there as a distraction. The old man was to be her next victim. The old man eventually was fed up with her and kicked her out of the home. All that was left in the home was the old man and the grandson he was fostering. They are both very kind and amazing neighbors. TLDR. Karen took our dog, so we took the kids and #X200B. Edit. Reading some comments, here is some clarification. I'm not sure the exact time frame. This happened around 7-ish years ago, and I was still fairly young at the time, but I believe this event lasted no more than 3-4 weeks. We live in a really safe neighborhood, so the thought about locking the doors in the daytime wasn't on our mind. Mostly because either me or one of my siblings were constantly in and out of the house, and our parents didn't trust us not to lose the keys and be stuck outside in the wintertime. By breaking in, I meant they would go in our house while we played in the yard. There was so many of them we didn't notice if 1 or 2 went missing for a short while. They were still allowed at my house after them stealing because in our kid brains we were still friends with them. There not a lot of younger kids in our area, so we took what we could get. We were friends with them and didn't want to lose any friendship. The kids were banned from our house after a week or so, but once in a while they would still come in if they were hanging out with us. I asked my mom and she said she didn't call the police because she was friends with our neighbor, old man, and didn't want to cause any tension with him. That, and if the daughter was a permanent neighbor, we didn't want her to be mad at us for calling the police. I hope that clears it up a bit. And #X200B. Edit 2. I accidentally said the wrong thing about the dog. She was impounded, so we had to pay $200 to get her out. We had her tags. They just weren't on her. We didn't have to re-adopt her like how I remembered. I fixed up the story a little bit to make things more clear. I talked to my mom and got some more to add to the story, so I fixed it up a bit. r/read my OG story. Which OMG, thank you. You're the reason I got a Reddit. So if you wanna see how I originally wrote it, feel free to check out his channel.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.